Welcome, everybody. I hope you're all enjoying San Diego Comic-Con online. This is the NeoText panel. My name is John Suntress. I host a podcast called Word Balloon. We've got a bunch of great creators that are making amazing content at NeoText. If you don't know, NeoText is a great online platform for digital prose. And we're looking at short form prose, specializing in essays, true stories, and a lot of genre fiction, from westerns to science fiction, superheroes, and great crime stories as well. And I'm very excited to be talking to these creative people today. We are going to go down the list, and we've got Ho Chi Anderson joining us. Welcome, Ho Chi. It's very nice to see you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much.
Benjamin Percy also joining us, the deepest voice in prose and comics. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you. Thank you.
And favorite, Francesco Francaviglia. That's a lot of F's, but good to see you, Francesco.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And very happy to welcome again Chloe Maval, we did a NeoText panel last year online, and a wonderful essayist who I think really examines the comics and pop culture in a very cool way. And I've been enjoying your essays for the last year that I've been reading them, Chloe. Welcome. It's good to see you.
Hi, it's good to see you too, John. Thank you.
Absolutely. This is a great platform, and I'd really be interested to hear why each of you have chosen to join it. So, Ho Chi, let's start with you. What intrigued you about NeoText?
Well, I kind of fell into NeoText. I became good friends with the great cartoonist Benjamin Mara, and we were hanging out one afternoon, just sharing a pint here in Toronto, or several pints, if I'm being totally honest. And he mentioned John Schoenfelder to me, and John and I struck up an immediate partnership. Our worldviews just happened to sync up very well. And we're both kind of angry with the state of the world, yet still like somewhat hopeful about its future prospects, despite all evidence to the evidence that's out there. And yeah, we just struck up a friendship and a partnership, and it's worked out pretty well so far. And I just feel very much like I appreciate the worldview. I appreciate their attempt to kind of show the world as potentially as it should be. And I also like their kind of almost socialist view in terms of how they treat their creators with respect and with equity, which is kind of a rare and beautiful thing. So I feel very much at home at NeoText.
That's interesting to refer to it as socialist, but you're right. It's fair treatment as far as ownership and stuff. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
absolutely. Ben, what intrigued you about NeoText?
A few years ago at New York Comic-Con, I met up with John, and we sat down and had a few pints and some nachos and just talked about all the nerdy stuff, comics, movies, novels, and felt a strong sort of aesthetic connection. He's interested in doing some of the same things that I'm interested in. That's taking genre and breaking it down into its component parts and trying to revitalize it and revise it in interesting ways through a contemporary lens. Some of the projects that we've been talking about over the years include film pitches and TV pitches, but also just with NeoText, he's making the endeavor to publish short fiction, publish novellas, and include incredible art alongside them. And this, is a market that's shrinking. As much as I love short stories, it's harder and harder to find them in the pages of The Atlantic or the Saturday Evening Post or, wherever you used to have these sort of marquee opportunities to get your fiction out there. That's shrinking, and he wants to elevate the form once again, but not just that, to think of every property as fluid. So here it is as a short story. Maybe that's where it ends, but John wants to get you in front of Hollywood producers, Hollywood directors, and potentially adapt these properties for the screen. So that sort of transmedia opportunity is definitely in my wheelhouse right now as somebody who writes across different mediums.
Understood. And yes, it's an interesting time right now. And beyond the work itself, certainly the streamers and all the other dramatic live action and even animation platforms got to feed the beast. Everybody wants new story, and it's great to see that this short form is and also a lot of times short form is more adaptable, I think, for the other mediums than a full novel. You always hear that, you got to read the book. I mean, there's a lot more story than what we get on the screen. So Francesco, you're working with Ben on his stuff. We'll get into details. And I have to say, NeoText has been great, tapping a lot of top artists. Ho Chi mentions Mara earlier, and I know Howard Chaykin and Jim Mafood have also done their work with NeoText. What intrigued you about putting art on this platform?
Well, yeah, I mean, the idea to have the illustration, like illustrated prose, like one of my favorite books is Silver Bullet by Stephen King, and, with Bernie Wright's on illustrations. So, and myself, I have several ideas, but comics require so much time to do. So even just to have just the text and some illustration to go along to show this world, I think it's a really good formula, which I enjoy doing it with Ben, and we'll probably do some more. Yeah. But I probably am gonna do that myself with some of the ideas that I have, because again, I can draw all the comics. There's only so much time available. So,
well, that's great to hear, and I'm so glad that you're getting into storytelling. And whether it's your Mondo posters or a lot of single images, I mean, I'm following you constantly on Twitter and Instagram and seeing what you're putting out there. And you always manage to convey a lot of story in single images, and I think that's great, and I think this is a great fit for you. And we'll talk about yours and Ben's collaboration in a second. But Chloe, I want to talk to you because I've really enjoyed your essays. I think they range from Golden Age, coverage on John Romita's romance comics to Ramona Fradon, to I love what seems to be a very deep dive, and we'll talk about it, into 2000 AD and a lot of facets of 2000 AD. So yeah, I mean, it seems of the group, you're the one that's had the most content on NeoText. How's the experience been for you, and also what intrigued you about initially joining NeoText?
I mean, I think that's the one thing that we all have in common here is we've all gotten hooked up with John Schoenfelder, and everything just kind of clicked into place. I kind of got hooked up with John, and we got talking about like different comics, and of course we both got talking on our love of old British comics and the stuff that the Treasury British Comics puts out. And I was just like, oh yeah, no, I am totally going to work for you. That's what's going to happen right now. And since then it's been a joy, because I feel like NeoText is such a great place where you can take comics content that is farther away from what you're seeing on a lot of comic sites right now, which are all wonderful because they give you the news that you need to know about and all of these stories. But I feel like we're able to give people room to talk about opinions on comics again, which you don't really see. You don't see nearly as many op-eds on comics anymore. And when you give people the room to really connect on a personal level and be able to write essays about that connection to comics, that's what makes it special again. And that's what brings these old comics back to life. So it's just been an absolute joy to give creators the due that they deserve, and talk about people that may not have gotten the attention that they should have, or work that they've done that maybe didn't get the attention that they should have. No, it's an absolute joy, and I get to talk about cool comics all day. There's nothing to complain about.
No, and you also get to, and forgive me, Ho Chi, but I was going to say, you also get to not only examine old comics and not just British, but European comics in a lot of ways, but also current comics as well. And it's good to see, because it's kind of ironic, because NeoText kind of prides itself on short form. I would say online, a lot of the commentary and coverage of comics is beyond short form, and sadly, I really feel in the last 20 years, electronically, they've gone for short form and top 5 lists, and not a real deep analysis, and that's one of the things I do appreciate about your essays, Chloe. So, Hochi,
Okay.
I felt like I stepped on you. What did you want to say?
Oh, no, no, no. I was just going to say, I love that. I mean, you're talking about the deep dives that you've done. And I remember you wrote a piece about comic book lettering. And I thought, how many
Yeah.
people take the time to give comic book lettering like the respect that it was due? So I don't know.
Yeah, and Lynn Varley
Congratulations.
too, coloring. I thought that was a great essay. Absolutely. And again, a great look at Erica Henderson. Kirby's Eternals, certainly in the zeitgeist right now with the trailer dropping.
Yeah.
So no, Chloe, you got it covered. And seriously, it's always a great perspective. And also just this incredible deep dive you're doing on 2000 AD, in fact, as well. Yeah, I mean,
Thanks.
really all the facets, the writers, the artists, and everything. And I think you're really getting into it. And it's just like I love hearing American or British perspectives on American comics. It's fun to see the opposite, and now what we think. Because again, they're as both are so intrinsic to the land they come from. I always love to hear a different perspective, and that's why I love talking to the Brits about when they write American comics and stuff. And so you're obviously covering the opposite end of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something a little bit different. I grew up reading American comics, and of course, I got into because of a family member who also collected comics. I got into British comics really early, and it was like, oh, this is something very different. This is a whole different like span of like different routes of the genres that you still see in American comics, but it's a little bit extra. And that entirely appealed to me and like my weird teen angst and sensibilities that just kind of carried over, well into my 20s and 30s. So it's just it's fun to explore, and also it's just fun to give spotlight to people and people who work in different aspects of comics. We see lots of people talk about writers in comics, obviously, and lots of artists, but rarely do we see people talk about letterers and the sheer talent that it takes to letter a comic properly, so that you can hear, if you can hear a comic reading it, that just makes all the difference. And letterers and colorists, and it changes a book. So while I think it's great that we get a chance to talk about the core of how comics are made, we need to get those little tiny bits up on the edge that nobody really seems to talk about, because God, they really deserve to be talked about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like subtle. Their contribution might seem subtle, but really, if you think about the subconscious and stuff, it helps for clarity of storytelling. Certainly, in the case of colorists, they are showing mood and feeling that the reader will, again, on a subtextual level, kind of realize. And again, it's something that is subconscious, but it's happening while you're reading the prose. Ben, tell me about and again, you certainly know about lettering and coloring when you're doing comics, but this is a prose thing that you're doing with NeoText. And again, with Francesco's. Well, explain it to me. Tell me about your project with Francesco.
Sure. I'll start off by referencing Bernie Wrightson, since Francesco brought him up. With Bernie Wrightson, with Graham Ingalls, Francesco is one of my horror Hall of Famers. I've been stalking him for many years, and really from the beginning, when John started talking about this, I was like, please, can I work with this guy? And John was thrilled to bring him on board. I'm so glad he said yes, because what we're doing is, there is some equivalence to Silver Bullet Cycle of the Werewolf, in that the story takes place over the course of a year's calendar. And so Francesco did, in addition to the cover, 12 illustrations, one for each month. And the premise is this: it takes place in the suburbs, and I've always been interested in this, air-conditioned, safety-padded, helmeted, seat-belted environment. We all know that underneath those pristine lawns and carefully manicured rose bushes, there are bodies buried. And we all know that, beyond the drawn curtains, there are arguments and affairs underway. And I love the idea of this place being the stage for a story about wildness spilling over. The idea that a place that seems too safe, that seems too pure and perfect and certain of itself, would be the, place where everything got out of control. And, a lot of great speculative stories are channeling cultural unease in some way. You think about Frankenstein, it's about the Industrial Revolution and the fear of science and technology and the fear of man playing God. If you look at Godzilla, it's about post-atomic anxieties. If you look at Invasion of the Body Snatchers, it's channeling the Red Scare. And if you look at the Living Dead films, every one of them is sort of representative of a different era and what it's trying to capture. So, what's been on our minds, a number of anxieties of late, but maybe chief among them, contagion. And so the idea that a contagion is spreading, a contagion that I link to lycanthropy, that is, there's essentially werewolfism is spreading among the population. And because it never really made sense to me, right? Like there's this one guy out in the moors and like he occasionally bites somebody and eats a few sheep. Like that would be spreading everywhere if somebody was, dosed up with that virus or whatever you want to call it. So, werewolves are spreading. Werewolves are in the air. And every time the moon is fat, things get unhinged and nobody knows who's infected. And so, in this place, and even though it's a macro story, you're aware of this larger event taking place on a global scale. It all takes place on one street. And nobody, this is a place where people used to leave their doors unlocked and they can't anymore. They suspect not just their neighbors, but their family members. And surveillance starts to play a role where they all agree to like put cameras in each other's houses so they can keep track of each other.
Okay.
And people begin to vanish, or sometimes there are patrols in the early morning after a full moon to see who is potentially outside or has gone missing, and so on and so forth. So the paranoia rises over time. It's a slow burn story. And by December, by the final month, it's just completely off the hook and out of control. And I guess you could call it, say that the premise is sort of like The Purge, but with werewolves.
Okay. And the title again?
The title is Werewolf.
Werewolf. Okay. And basically would you describe the setting as a bedroom community? Is that I don't know if you know that,
It all takes place on Manitou Street, and it's the sort of setting that has, lush, knuckly oak trees and, children running through sprinklers and all that kind of
Sure.
stuff.
No, I get it. I grew up in that kind of neighborhood in suburban Chicago, so I can certainly relate from a setting standpoint. No werewolves though.
A decapitated head stuck on a flagpole.
Yeah. No, we didn't have that. That sounds great. Francesco, how much in terms of the collaboration, is your original inspiration for drawing, or like, are you getting specific cues from Ben of what to draw, or did you read the story and create the illustrations after the fact? How did that all work out?
Well, yeah, I got the old book, the old novella, which is 12 chapters, and I was like reading a chapter and then think what to draw. Ben gave me kind of suggestions for each chapter, and I didn't read it because I felt like if I read the suggestion, that's like spoilers. I want to read the book first. And then pretty much, I think we were aligned on the same page. But usually, yeah, I try to see what is the moment that speaks to me. But like Ben was mentioning, this story feels very, especially now coming out from a pandemic, it felt very real. Like the feelings that the characters feel against the neighbors is what pretty much I've been feeling myself in the last 12 months. I mean, I'm not worrying that he's a werewolf, but does he have COVID? Like, so there is the same anxiety, and yeah, it felt very real. I think it will really resonate and connect with the readers. But yeah, art-wise, again, I was reading and find the moment that try not to give up too much, because there's people that flip through. I don't want to spoil with the art, but also try to add to the mystery, to the suspense of the book.
Does your art I mean, so does each month, given that you're doing the calendar and stuff, does each month lead with your image and then we start reading, or how would you describe it?
I'm not sure how the book is going to lay out, so I'm not sure if the image will be at the beginning of the chapter or be in the middle. So
okay, do you have a suspicion on that, Ben, in terms of
I'm not positive on that. I would assume it would be nested somewhere in the middle of the chapter, but who knows what the ultimate design will be. But I will say that, Francesco did this just incredible, he kind of channeled EC Comics, it felt like, in some of these images, and some of them are, they're haunting in the way that he, includes the moon, or includes a forest intruding upon a suburban environment, or has the implication of a claw, or uses sometimes what you don't see. What you don't see is more horrifying than what you do see. There's just a glimpse of something.
Sure.
And he's not afraid to just give you something very simple, like a mailbox with blood dribbling out of it. Or something like every month it was just a delight, a terrifying delight to see my inbox blow up with his art.
I had done that approach with Afterlife with Archie. We had at the beginning of each issue started always with some kind of splash, and there was like a little quote that Roberto was writing that was hinting, like I did this broken slide. Sorry, it was a swinging in a playground.
Sure.
Yeah. So always like there seems to be like quiet or innocent or totally normal moment, but there is something that is wrong with it, and that unsettling between what are you used to and what is behind that is coming.
Yeah, he does this thing where it's like you're looking at something you recognize, and then you look a little closer and you realize how wrong it is all of a sudden. Like here's this playground, here's a slide, and then in the foreground you're looking at the bark chips when you realize that there are teeth in the bark chips. And then you look to the background, and further, in the sort of forested backdrop, you don't notice it at first, but there's a silhouette of just a beast that's watching.
I think one of my favorite quote was from David Lynch, and I think he said that you see this nice white painted fence in front of the house, but then when you go look close, there at the base there are rodents, there is ants, there is bugs. So what looks nice at first, then when you get close,
that's the perfect description. Yeah. The blue velvet, right?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, you have the suburbs, and then it goes closer and closer and closer, and you get into the grass, and there's isn't it an ear?
That has, I think it was I can remember, it was a part of a human body.
Ear with ants crawling all over it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was going to ask you, Ben, if you're a David Lynch fan.
I love David Lynch. Yeah.
Who doesn't?
That's great.
That is absolutely Francesco's, just his vibe in this whole thing. And I never tell any artist what to draw. He did ask, what are some ideas, but he totally did his own thing for a lot of them.
Very cool. It's funny, and it's sad that we're not physically at San Diego as we come out of the pandemic. I know they're going to have their event around Thanksgiving. But I always, when I think about short prose, and as Ho Chi and Ben described it, really like classic magazine novellas and short prose like that, always amazing art. And they always have this one booth of original paintings and sketches of stuff that was in the Saturday Evening Post or the Men's Adventure magazines from
And
the
they're
40s through the,
amazing.
yes. And Chloe,
Uh,
I'm so with you. And I literally spend as much time as possible in that booth, just thumbing through that stuff. I can't afford it, but I certainly appreciate it. And I always buy the Robert McGinnis books and the like of these amazing illustrators. And that's why it's exciting to know that Francesco's stuff is, going to have
Yeah.
that same kind of format.
I recently tried to get Virgil Finlay illustration. It just went way over my budget, but yeah, I love it. It was doing those illustration in the book, with illustrating Lovecraft or the Conan stories. They were all short novellas back in the 30s. So
Oh God, yeah, absolutely, man. Ho Chi, let's talk about your series. First of all, I should ask, Ho Chi Anderson, such an interesting name. Tell us the origins of your name.
Yeah, interesting is definitely a word for it. Apparently, the story I'm told is that when I was born, if I was going to be a girl, and this may be apocryphal, but this is the story I've been told. If I was going to be a girl, it would have been my mother who would have chosen my name. Since it was a boy, my father took the naming chores. My father's a very smart guy, but he's not very good with names, as far as I'm concerned. So yeah. I would maybe have workshopped that a little bit more if it had been me. But he apparently took, he took Ho Chi Minh and he took Che Guevara and he slammed them together. And yeah, and you get me. So
Ho Che, really? Okay.
Chi, I don't care.
No, but that's great. Well, that's really interesting because, of course, Ho Chi Minh came to mind, but I had no idea that it was a combination of Ho Chi Minh and Che Guevara. That's fantastic. Very cool.
I mean, it's unique. I'll give it that. But it's also been a bit of a pain in the ass throughout my life. So what are you gonna do?
Well, tell us about now. You're doing a series focusing on one character. His name is Stone. Tell us about Stone. Who is he?
Actually, Stone is a she.
Excuse me.
Yeah, there are 2 books in the series. There's Stone, and then there's Rizzo. That's the male character. So what happened is John and I kind of looked around at the world in 2018. With Trump leaning into making veiled threats towards fascism, not so veiled threats.
Yeah, really.
We kind of extrapolated where the world would be had the the neo-right, the ultra-conservatives kind of gotten their way, and we concocted a world in which elections have been canceled, and women's sports have been declared unnecessary. The right wing is completely taken over. It's basically become a fascist utopia. So when we were concocting this stuff, we were trying to think of the most extreme things we could think of, only to have January 6th so-called insurrection come along and prove to us that we hadn't quite taken things as far as we should have gone, which was a highly sobering conclusion to come to. But basically our character lives in a world in which, as I said, the elections have been canceled and people have been forced to pay something called an air tax, which is, is exactly what it sounds like. You got to pay $5,000, and if you fall behind, that's your ass. You basically wind up on a chain gang, becoming a slave, an indentured servant, however you want to describe it. And our characters are ones that have been affected either indirectly by just the social system as it stands, or directly by the ruling oligarchs of the town in which our first story is set. And these people decide that our main character, Stone, is, rather than her own person, she is essentially their property. And they take great pains to, express this to her. And she decides, after she's been broken down, after her father has died due to their policies, that she's got nothing more to lose. And being gifted mentally and gifted physically, and she kind of takes these skills that she's got, that she's been bestowed upon, perhaps by a higher power, and uses it to effect justice. And it's not something that she wants. She would rather just kind of be doing her own thing, playing basketball and living that life. But sometimes fate kind of thrusts responsibility upon us, and she rises to the occasion.
That's
so
excellent.
it's a cautionary tale of what happens when power is left unchecked.
Okay, and then tell us about Rizzo, his character.
Rizzo is also a victim of that system. He is a former basketball star like Stone. Also chose not to play by the system's rules. Found himself on the chain gang, on a fast track for a very horrible death. And inspired by the events of Stone in the novella Stone, where she takes her revenge against like I said, the ruling oligarchs. He's inspired. He breaks out of prison and decides he's also gonna try to stick it to the ruling class in the most effective way possible by stealing their money. So that one's So that's the story of Rizzo and Stone essentially.
And is this a continuing series? You're going to explore this world further in other short form?
Well, I mean, as Ben mentioned, I mean, one of the and I think Chloe as well. One of the aims behind NeoText was to transmedia, and I'm happy to say we have just like optioned Stone for screen, which is pretty exciting.
That's great.
So, yeah, so I'm hoping there's going to be a film version at some point down the road. But if that never happens, I just love that world and I love that character as a literary creation. I was wanted to, I was Arthur Conan Doyle fan as a child, and
sure.
I loved that kind of short pulp storytelling. So it'd be exciting just to continue telling her adventures. And the good thing about this kind of storytelling is it's great for social commentary. Social commentary combined with with thrills and chills is kind of a storytelling that I kind of understand innately. And it's great to be able to we can respond almost in real time to events, real world events within this pulp setting. So yeah, I can't see how we wouldn't be continuing to tell the story. I mean, I've got years of stories mapped out for Stone, so that I'm not in danger of running out of material, that's for sure.
Well, that's great. And again, the best of the pulp shorts and the like that were coming out from really, I think, as you say, going back to Arthur Conan Doyle through the 70s, at least, was that reflection of what was happening now. And those stories even now will suck you into the environment of the era. So that's great. And certainly, yeah, you're right. This crazy world that we're currently living in is an interesting backdrop to kind of tell interesting pulp stories. So I can appreciate that. And the fact, too, that Rizzo kind of links into sports, as I'm looking at my notes, another intriguing, not represented here by our panel, but I do want to read Peter Richmond's sports noir fiction that he has that kind of merges the NFL and crime. And I think that's, again, it's like sports noir. And I think that's pretty interesting as well. And Chloe, again, your essays, as we said, not only covering the international scene of comics and comics history, also giving a voice to a lot of queer creators and queer perspectives. And if you could tell us about, what you want to convey in these essays.
Well, I mean, we're filming here in June. It's Pride Month. Woo! So we have tons lined up for this month in particular. I went out of my way to specifically hire all queer writers for this month, and basically just said an all call, look, are you a queer essayist? And do you really like comics? And do you have a really, really interesting take on something that maybe other people wouldn't have gotten out of it yet? And the number of people who have come to me with some really super fun ideas is just fantastic. I mean, I know next week we have a wonderful writer by the name of Joanna Marsh, who is writing about how trans women are depicted in The Sandman, which is very on topic for casting decisions that have been made.
Yes.
For the Netflix show. We also have somebody coming in at the end of the month named Sam Moore, and they are going to be writing about Clive Barker and all of the queer subtext in Clive Barker's work, which is, I ate that up. It's for me. And I have a steady stream of people that are coming through, and it's just nice to be able to give people the space to be like, I get it. you have an idea that maybe doesn't fit somewhere else, I want to hear it. And like, it might not be publishable at other sites because they aren't comfortable publishing very expressly queer content. And I'm here to throw that to the wind. Like, no, thank you. Bring it all here. I want to pay you for it. I want everybody to read it. Like, those are voices that deserve to be heard. And those are opinions that need to be heard. Like, just today, I wrote an essay that went up this afternoon about John Smith, the 2000 AD writer who has been doing comics for, God, almost 40 years now. And I was reading Firekind, which came out in the early 90s that he did. And I was like, this isn't queer, but it's queer in the other sense of the word. It's weird, it's strange.
Okay.
And that got me like thinking about, oh, there's so many different ways that you can use the word queer. And then you read
Indeed.
something like Devlin Waugh, who is straight up a gay character. He's a gay bodybuilding vampire. And it was like, oh, so he writes everything queer. And I was like, let's do something on that. And then it turned into a 3,000 word essay. And that's what I'm trying to encourage everybody else to do too.
That makes sense. And again, I think, everyone's busy, and you get that. I don't have to read. And it bums me out that the magazine rack, whether it's in a supermarket or in a bookstore, has only gotten smaller. And I can, all my life loved going to great bookstores and great Tower Records back in the day always had an incredible magazine collection internationally, and you just really appreciated all these different voices coming from around the world. Well, now add the further lap or layer of people of color and people of different sexual orientations finally getting the chance to speak. And these are, and again, I'm not paid by NeoText, but I really do appreciate the format because these are really affordable. They're cheaper than today's comics. They're usually the price is $2.99, and they're really satisfying reads, whether it is the fiction or there's also a lot of true crime and true stories. I noticed Mike Sager is another prolific writer at NeoText, and he's got these great true story essays about Carlos Castaneda from The Mob, and the Janet Cook story, which I'm really excited to sit down and read. She was the Washington Post columnist that got tripped up on some fake news before the term even was created. And I've certainly read her story from the perspective of people like Bob Woodward and others at the Post. So it's going to be really interesting to read that. Also a great essay about Marlon Brando. So that's what I mean. I mean, really the variety and I think the size of the format and the affordability. I think these are all great hallmarks of what you get at NeoText. So yeah, I mean, everybody, like, how has the experiment been so far? I mean, Ben and Francesco, this is your first volley into NeoText, but yeah, Hochi, what do you think of what's been going on over there so far?
Honestly, so far this collaboration has been one of the best that I've had yet. John's an awesome guy. He's incredibly creative. He's got a huge brain, and he's just very fair in the way that he treats his creators, his collaborators, which is kind of unique in my experience. He's just a great guy, and so I've made and I feel like. I feel very much like I've found like a home where I can, be creative, be experimental when I want to be, just be straight up mainstream when I want to be, and it's all kind of will sort of be read as a piece. So I'm just really excited to be here. I'm kind of shocked that I've fallen into this partnership. It's pretty sweet.
That's excellent. That's great to hear. Well, as we wrap up, everybody, are there other things you want to point people to, either on the NeoText website or other projects you guys might be working on? While we're talking, Oche, tell us what else you got going on.
Oh wow, yeah, I've got fortunate right now that I've got quite a few things on the go. Supernatural book called The Resurrectionists, going to be coming out from Megascope and Abrams Comic Arts imprint. Working on a couple of film projects, which I'm excited about. Doing a Luke Cage thing with Marvel.
Oh, that's great.
yeah, like pretty much like this week. I'm supposed to be starting on it, or sorry, next week. A bunch of cool things in the works. Pretty excited.
Have they announced your artist for? I beg your pardon. Please say that again.
I was going to say, just come check me out on Instagram, Ho.J. Anderson.
There you go. Absolutely. And have they announced you? I don't want to spoil any of Marvel's marketing plans. Have they announced who your artist is for Luke Cage?
Yes, it's going to be pencils are by Sean Damian Hill, inks are by LeBeau Underwood, and colors are by Rochelle Rosenberg.
That's great to hear. That's outstanding. What's coming up, Ben?
I just had a novel come out on June 1st called The Ninth Metal, and that kicks off a series of that's I'm referring to as the Comet Cycle.
That looks badass, dude.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
It's kind of weird. I mean, putting out a book in a time where you don't have a book tour, it's almost as though it didn't happen. So I'm grateful that somebody out there liked it. And otherwise, I'm writing Wolverine, I'm writing X-Force. Francesco and I have another thing coming with NeoText, Beyond Werewolf. And I'm flirting with Hollywood. I've adapted Urban Cowboy for Paramount with my buddy James Ponsolt, and we're about to take that out. And I've got a few other TV projects I'm playing with as well. One of which is a video game adaptation I can't talk about because of 50,000 NDAs I signed. But yeah, I'm juggling a lot of chainsaws.
Excellent. Francesco, regardless of what projects you have coming up, you win for most intriguing background of our conversation today. So I love a lot of those posters and original art you got behind you.
Yeah, it's posters and the original art. It's in my inspiration. There is like Kirby Wrightson. The one, it's Wrightson right there.
Wow.
That's a Wrightson.
Oh.
That's mine. A friend of mine, there's a species. I used to paint with acrylic, and he asked me to do it was his birthday, so I said, I need to gift him something. So I painted a piece and gave it to him, and then he gave it back to me the next day because said that his family didn't care much. So said, rather than having in a drawer hidden, can you do Spider-Man? So I did a Spider-Man. But actually, when I finished it, I said, oh man, this came out so good, I want to keep it. So actually, not good for me, yes. And you got like a creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah, great bust. Absolutely.
I think there is two right there. There's the other guy.
And Last Man on Earth, of course, the best adaptation of Richard Matheson's I Am Legend. And I'm still waiting for the perfect adaptation, but right now my vote goes to Vincent Price over Omega Man and the Will Smith I Am Legend, but that's me.
I kind of like Omega Man personally, but
I like Omega Man too, but I don't know. There's something about Vincent Price, the fact it was shot in Italy, black and white and everything.
Yeah.
But again, evocative of the moment. I mean, they really took I Am Legend and really made it this very relevant. I mean, Woodstock is in the movie. It really is that moment of society and everything. And I think it achieves a lot. I always say my favorite, Charlton Heston, Dr. Kildare, Richard Chamberlain, and Michael York are like the unsung genre action heroes of the 70s, given their body of work at that time. And they should be regarded as the predecessors to the Robert Downeys and the Scarlett Johanssons and the Chris Evans and all these wonderful actors. You got to put Pam Grier in there, I guess, as well, in terms of, great women as far as doing great genre fiction and stuff of the 70s. So yeah, that's there you go. There's my 2 cents on old movies and where they belong as far as that goes. Chloe, what do you got coming up?
Oh, same old. We're just doing a lot of really, really amazing essays, and I am constantly getting all new freelancers that come in to tell amazing stories and provide a whole different take than what you might be used to from comics or movie commentary, and me blabbing my mouth about comics all the time, but that's about it. There's constantly something in the works. There's always something up on the site. I try to always make sure there's a couple of new posts and big essays every week, and that's it. We always have something for everybody.
That's wonderful to hear. And I'm sorry, please, Oche.
Oh, sorry, I keep doing that. I was
not at all.
like I see your byline like almost every single day.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's terrific.
But it's fun.
No, and again, though, we want people want a reason to come back to the site, and again, you provided neotextcorp.com
Yes.
is CORP. So
Yes.
NeoTextCorp.com. That's the URL to go to NeoText and experience a lot of this stuff. And once you click on one of the pieces to purchase, it'll direct you to Amazon. And then you're set. But you'll get good thumbnails of what the stories are about. You'll see preview art as well, and know what you're buying. And again, I think you'll find the subjects and the talent intriguing and worthy of your time and your money. So I hope everyone was informed about what NeoText is all about today. And this is, again, we're pre-recording this during Pride Month in June. I certainly hope to have already spoken to all four of you on Word Balloon, my podcast at wordballoon.com, and on my YouTube channel. Ben and I have already made plans to have that talk, and I was already talking to Jose and Francesco and Chloe about getting everybody on to talk more about what they're doing on NeoText, and also just in general this very weird world, and again coming out of COVID, and how all of you have been reacting, and how it impacted your creativity, either positively or negatively. So I look forward to those conversations as well. And once again, neotextcorp.com if you want to check this stuff out. Great conversation, everybody. Really a pleasure meeting Jose, and it's great seeing Ben, Francesco, and Chloe again. So thank you very much for the great conversation.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You, John, and great to meet you all.
Absolutely.
Nice to meet y'all too.